All right, hello. Welcome back. So today we're going to discuss a pretty popular but also important question and kind of point. And it revolves around the idea of if God can be all loving and all good, right? How can logically then hell or evil exist, right? So I'm gonna kind of combine it and talk about hell and evil together because they go in together. So if God is all loving, why does hell exist? And if He loves me so much, why would He send me there if I didn't love Him back? Isn't His love supposed to be unconditional? So I've got an interesting analogy that I came up with the other day that I'm gonna use to discuss this, and it kind of comes down to how you understand hell. So hell isn't this necessarily this place that you see depicted in the media, like this place, this underworld looking nether world, like of fire and everything, right? Of fire and pain and of these like demons and whatnot. But it's more of like a state of distance from God, right? So if heaven is a state of closeness and oneness with God, hell is like a state of infinite separation, right? Infinite separation, just keep that in mind, right? And you might think that that's more manageable in like a weird way than a place where you're actively being tortured and everything burns and whatnot, right? But, I still wouldn't recommend it because by its very nature, a state so distant from God, a state of existence so distant from God, will naturally kind of turn into that because of what it is by nature. So, why does simply existing separate from God, cause such a state to exist? Such a place of pain, suffering, and evil. Why does that happen when you're far from God? So if you look at God's nature itself and His attributes, God is all loving, all good, and He ultimately is love and goodness as it stands, right? So now we're moving on to the analogy now. So you get these attributes. Now imagine Him as all the light inside a house during the day, right? Like it's everywhere. The light fills the house. It's in every room. It's everywhere pretty much, right? Illuminating every room, space. God's love and goodness is like that. So everywhere unless someone actively blocks it. So imagine the house is full of light, right? But, God created us with free will, and the church teaches that we chose the tree of knowledge all those years ago, right? And the knowledge of good and evil. So it gives us that ability to even be able to choose to block the light if we wanted to, right? And this is an option. We can close curtains, shut doors, and make it dark in a certain room because we know between the two, right? We don't have to necessarily sit in the light. And this shows that evil, in itself, isn't actually a thing. It's more of you might have heard this before, but it's more of an absence of good, right? In the same way, darkness isn't actually a thing. It's more of like it's an absence of light. It's not like a singular entity in of itself. It's just the lack of photons hitting that thing that causes it to look dark. And cold, for example, is just a word to describe the absence of heat, right? So where does evil come from? It just comes from us choosing to block out God and choosing to make areas of that house darker, right? So now back to the idea of hell, okay? So with all this in mind, it kind of sets up a pretty good analogy. We started off with it. We've got the light and all of the light filling the entire house. So in the house that's filled with light, which is God's goodness and love, you can choose to go down to like a basement that the house has. It's really dark in this basement. There is hardly any light is piercing through it, and you can go down there, and it's kind of, in a human sense, it's kind of cool, because anything you do, all your acts aren't really seen by everyone. You can do stuff in private, in a sense. It's dark. It's not like you're constantly being illuminated and out in the open, right? Your actions aren't so visible. Think about that. So it's dark in this basement, and it feels convenient. The darkness hides everything. You can do evil and sin without the shame, because you're not doing it in the light. And you can think no one sees, but the very thing that seems like it's liberating or freeing you becomes almost a prison, as you cut yourself off from that light and goodness that brings the true freedom, right? So before Christ died on that cross, the basement didn't have a way to get back out. Like, you fell down there, you're basically staying down there, right? You jumped down and you couldn't come back out. But Christ came down into this basement that we created, that's void of God's love. And this is basically what the world is like. It's void of this goodness and love, because we chose to block it all out. And he brought a light with him, like a flashlight or a candle, it doesn't really matter. Illuminating the area with his goodness. But, humans, naturally, we made this place to not be like this. So we hated this goodness. We crucified him, and we got rid of the light again and made it dark again. But after his death, he rose again. And when he ascended into heaven, which, I'm using my metaphor here, and went back up into the main area of the house and left the basement, he also left a ladder that lets us also leave, right? And a way to climb out if we wanted to. So you can now decide to stay in the basement. Like, now you have an even greater, range of free will, in a way, right? You can stay in this basement and it be your choice, right? God will honor your free will and will let you stay there for all eternity if that's what you choose. But Christ came down, experienced, the true depth of the darkness and lack of love and goodness that we, brought upon this world by blocking God out. He experienced this and still decided, yes, I'm going to build a ladder here to let my children back out and to me, and get them to me, right? And since then, he's basically been standing at the entrance, practically screaming from that trapdoor above there, calling for us to come up. And if you climb the ladder just high enough, you'll find his hand ready, like there, to pull you out of this dark world that, we live in. So what does this all come down to? God doesn't put you into hell to suffer if you choose not to live by him, right? You entirely make that decision yourself. If you want to stay in the dark basement for your whole life, then you will just stay there for the rest of eternity. And that's a decision you make in life, not after death, where you can then say, oh, actually these choices I made, the choices is now. It's not like it goes back to my dislike for New Year's resolutions, but it's not like you can just say that after this life you'll do better. It's like you can't procrastinate this improvement. You have to take action now and do it now. So you entirely make that decision yourself of going to hell and staying in that dark realm almost. So the question isn't why God would send me to hell, but why would I choose to stay separated from a God who loves me so much that he chose to die for me and let me leave this dark world, right? So, I don't know, it becomes a much easier choice. You can stay down there, or you can, try and climb back out. And sure, it's difficult, but like I said, you climb high enough, his hand will be there, and you'll be able to get out. So, the ladder's there, and you should climb it.